So you want to be a guitar YouTuber? Are you sure? We've got part 2 of our series of how to be a guitar YouTuber coming up right now here on GearGasms. Hi kids, welcome to GearGasms. I'm your host Alan Barnes. Today we're doing part 2 of the Multipart Series, So You Want to Be a Guitar YouTuber. Now in part 2 of the series today we're going to be focusing on lights, camera, and audio. Now the first thing we're going to talk about is lights. The first thing you want to do is learn about 3-point lighting. Now as I'm sitting here, I've got a light right there. That's my primary light, and it's a 3-point lighting system. So I have the primary light over here, down a little bit lower, and with some barn doors to keep from washing the whole side out, I have what's known as a fill light to keep from looking half lit and having my face too shadowed from this side. And above this thinning hair of mine, I have what's known as a hair light. Now that you've got 3-point lighting concept in your head, you need to think about exactly where you're going to place them, the light temperature, the color temperature, whether you're going to use mostly white light or some yellow light or a mix, and then filling and lighting the entire set. Now as far as the kind of lights that you want to use, I started off, again, I've got this softbox over here. It's just a ultraviolet fluorescent light fixture. I got 2 of those with stands from Amazon, and I did my first videos using that lighting. I had 2 of them. They were really bulky. They were hard to work with. They did provide quality light. It did disperse the light. I didn't have any hot spots in the lighting. But as I found as I went on, even though those are fluorescent fixtures, especially in the summertime, you got a couple of those things cooking and suddenly things get very, very hot. And it doesn't help that when the camera's on, you're probably nervous anyway, so you don't really need the extra heat. So pretty quickly, say 3-4 months into my first year on YouTube, I decided to investigate more LED lights. The first one I got, and I'll show you later, is the hair light. I got 3 more of the newer panels. They're larger panels, and they have 2 colors of LEDs in them. They have yellow and they have white. They're really, really flexible, but even more importantly, they don't really put out a lot of heat, and I can get them in smaller spaces. They're much easier to deal with. They're much smaller. I love them. So we'll take a look at those, and then we'll move on to camera stuff. I've got this softbox. It is lighting the green screen over there, just giving it a wash. Those are good for like fill-in lights or just general lights. But this is the light I was talking about, the LED, the newer. This one's battery operated. This particular light unfortunately didn't come with a plug-in option, so I'm forever having this thing go out on me during shoots and having to swap the battery, which is a real pain in the ass. When you come back here, this is normally where I have camera 1 set up. I generally try to do single camera shots. That is the main, that's the primary light that points at the chair. You want to keep it a little bit higher than your subject and point it down. The fill light, you want to keep it head level and a little bit straighter. And just like we talked about a little while ago with the battery, this thing died in the middle of a shot. There's the mixing desk and things that you don't see. One thing that's important is monitoring your shot, especially if you're like most YouTubers and you're filming yourself. Now one more thing about lighting and we'll move on. Currently right now, when I'm in a multicam shoot, I'm looking at camera 1. It's right there. The lighting in that is pretty even. I look over at my monitor, I can sort of see everything looks kind of good. So everything's good. Here's where it gets tricky. If I switch to camera 2, the light might not be quite so good. Right now, camera 2 is not too far away from camera 1. So it's not as dramatic, the lighting change. In this scenario, the lighting that I have here sort of works for both of them because they're sort of coming in just a slightly, maybe 60-degree angle difference. But now that I'm back on camera 1, let's imagine the more usual scenario that I'll do for multicam, where I've got this camera here, that's camera 1, I've got a guitar, and I've maybe got a camera here because I want to catch my hand on the fingerboard. That's where you can get tricky, because lighting that works for this may not work for this. You may find that these lights that are lower are making reflections off the guitar, or it's getting kind of weird, and it's not. So sometimes you want to think about, if you're doing multi-camera work, that you just have to find a way to maybe get a little more creative and possibly bring a third or a fourth light into it. It's really hard when you get a lot of tight shots with more depth of field shots to make the lighting work with both cameras as I look back and forth to each shot, just to drive myself nuts on the multicam edit. All right, do we have enough fun with lights? Now we're going to talk about cameras. Now, there are people who tell you the camera is not important, and it's kind of true. The lights are the most important thing. If you've got good lighting, you can make a good looking video even with a camera that's not so great, including your cell phone, your iPhone, your Android, whatever. But after struggling with the different types of less expensive cameras, I came to a realization after watching a bunch of YouTube videos, it was time to go DSLR. Now, I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty of the DSLR type cameras. You can do all that research and decide which one's best for you. Me, I settled on the Canon T6i. I bought one, learned how to use it, learned all the menu options, learned how to use it really, really well. And then when I would do multicam, I'd still pull the JVC in. But one thing I really started to notice in the footage was the JVC just did not have the vibrant colors. It wasn't nearly as crisp. You could really tell when I switched cameras. I still use this for B-roll. So what I ended up doing was I got another Canon T6i. As tempted as I was to try another camera brand like Sony or Nikon just to see how they would shoot, I knew there was a benefit in terms of battery, sharing cables and parts, and just knowing the camera well to get the same exact model. So I have two Canon T6i's, so that's what works for me. Now I'm gonna go switch to this JVC just so you can see what I'm talking about in terms of video quality and color. See this here chair and how everything looks with the Canon. All right, this is the same shot with the JVC. Looking through the viewfinder right now, it doesn't really look that different. I'll just give you some general things about cameras that you want to keep in mind for shooting, just general basics. You want to shoot at probably 30 frames per second, that's standard. You want to shoot at 1080p. It keeps the file sizes more reasonable. It doesn't tax the computer when I'm editing the video, and it still looks really pro. Okay, let's talk about audio. Audio is extremely important in the guitar YouTube world. If your audio sucks, people might put up with it. If you're really engaging, you're really good looking, maybe you're hilarious, or maybe your playing is off the charts, they may forgive audio more than they forgive poor video quality or poor lighting. But audio is extremely important. Now what I'm using right now is a clip-on mic. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right here. I try to keep it centered under the chin. I've had to learn the hard way that if I've got a guitar, especially with a strap, and I'm doing a lot of jostling around, maybe I'm not playing, but I'm shifting the guitar around, it's slapping up against the mic or causing some noise. So you want to make sure you get that straight. Now when I first started off, I started using the audio that was built into the camera, and it worked kind of goodish. It was okay. So I was able to find a really inexpensive Samson mic that was on closeout, a wireless lavalier mic on Amazon. I think I paid like 130 bucks for it, and it works great. Now I've got the receiver to this hooked up over here to my DAW, and I shoot the audio separately rather than into the camera. And the reason is, even these nice Canons, audio is usually an afterthought. That's kind of where they scrimp. The preamps that are built in the cameras are not all that great. I have much more control if I dump the audio into my DAW. My video editing program blessedly has a great multicam editing component where I just bring in, even if it's a single shot, I bring in the video, I bring in the separate audio on MP3. It syncs them together beautifully into a multicam. I output that, I'm good to go. Now the second piece of that is the audio for your guitar. We're going to presume that you're going to be playing some in your videos. I generally mic a cabinet. I've got several amps. Sometimes I'll use like Pod Farm in the DAW, and I'll run the guitar straight over to the DAW. It depends. Obviously, if I'm demoing an amp, I go ahead and I mic the amp. You just got to watch your levels, and that's true of the voice mic and of the amp. There's nothing worse than shooting a whole segment, your playing was on point, your blah 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 was on point. You go to edit it and the audio is either too much or it's too little or it's crap or you forgot to turn it on. I've had that happen. I'm going to show you what the difference between camera miking, shotgun miking, and this clip-on lavalier mic is, and you'll hear the difference immediately. Now right now I'm just using the built-in mic on the Canon. I've got the volume set about halfway. I'm trying to sort of project my voice but not be too shouty at the camera. Now this is how the camera sounds with a built-in shotgun mic. I just use a Takstar. Maybe it sounds a little better. I hope it does. I hope you can hear the difference. It's an improvement over the built-in camera mic, but for my money it's still pulling in a lot of room. Alright, last but not least, gonna discuss the ins and outs of doing a segment that includes playing and talking at the same time. Make it easy on yourself. Just make your segments where you play, just play. Then you're only worried about one source of audio. Me, I'm a talker as much or more than I'm a player. So often when I'm doing something, especially when I'm talking about the gear, I'll talk, then I'll play, then I'll talk, then I'll play. With the multi-track audio, I've got voice in one channel, in one track, and I've got the guitar, whether it's in a DAW or mic'd up in another track. What I find that I have to do is when I'm speaking and I'm transitioning to playing, I'll speak and say, let me show you a little bit about how the bridge pickup sounds on this thing. Then I'll pause before I talk again, so I'll pause right after I speak before the playing and pause after the playing again before I speak. And what that allows me to do is to grab the fader on the multi-track and to pull this mic down, because if I don't, even when this is relatively loud, as close as this is, especially sitting down to me playing, you'll pick up a lot of the clackety-clack in this. So let's summarize what we went over today. First thing, lights. 3-point lighting, cameras, get the best camera you can. If you like using multicam, it's sometimes easier to get the same model, have two of the same thing. And lastly, we talked about audio. We showed you the difference between a clip-on mic and the built-in camera mic and a shotgun mic. We talked about miking multiple sources for the same shoot. One thing we didn't get into with the cameras as much as I wanted to, because I kind of forgot about it, but I did give you a little glimpse of it. I have two 13-inch high-definition monitors I got off Amazon. You can use the flip screen on your camera and you can sort of see what's going on there to make sure you're at least in frame, but it won't show you problems with focus. So I've got one for each camera, and when they're on, I've got a monitor here, I've got one there, and in between shots I can look over there at that guy and make sure, am I in frame, am I in focus? So I hope you're liking this series so far. As always, like and subscribe. I thank you so much for your time. I hope to keep seeing you week after week right here on GearGasms.